everyone. Welcome back to our English class. I prepared a new lesson today, so I hope you are going to listen attentively. Today, we will talk about analytical listening in problem solving. This is our most essential learning competency for this week. Employ analytical listening in problem solving. So you are expected to describe analytical listening and problem solving, apply analytical listening based on the given situations or existing problems, and show appreciation in honing one's analytical listening skill. Can you hear me? Are you listening? Do you get my point? These are the usual questions students would hear from teachers. These are also sometimes heard from parents when talking to their children or from friends who are having a conversation. Every day, you listen to so many messages. At home, you listen to instructions or rules set by parents. When watching the TV or listening to the radio, you hear the advertisements, news, gossips, and a lot more. At school, you listen to academic information. You hear all of them. But surely, they are not always clear. You have to separate the messages which are true from those which are not. Analytical listening, sometimes called critical or active listening, deals with one's ability and capacity to carefully and properly analyze the sound or sounds listened to. This does not only involve comprehension on what has been heard, but more importantly, the ability to distinguish and categorize the information listened to. This is when one can decide if what he hears is true or not. This is also called active listening, as it requires the listener to provide significant and evaluative feedback or response on what he or she has heard from the speaker or the sound platforms. In here, the listener is able to rephrase or restate the information heard to check one's listening understanding. The features of analytical listening allow listeners and speakers to avoid miscommunication, misinterpretation, and misinformation. As such, comprehension and understanding are both ensured. The problem is, not everyone pays attention. Not everyone realizes the importance of listening analytically or critically. Listening becomes a neglected skill, which is a sad truth because listening is one of the macro skills that a student should develop in school. Analytical listening requires sequential process. These stages include the following: receiving stage, understanding stage, evaluating, responding, and remembering stage. Let us discuss this one by one. When we say receiving stage, it refers to actual hearing process. In here, the listener has to check him or herself if he or she is able to hear clearly the sounds and other sound points. It is the intentional focus on hearing a speaker's message, which happens when we filter out other sources so that we can isolate the message and avoid the confusing mixture of incoming stimuli. At this stage, again, we are still only hearing the message. Number 2, understanding stage. It focuses on generating meaning on what has been heard. In here, the connection on communication between the listener and the speaker must be clearly established. This constitutes the idea that the understanding of the speaker must be the same with the listener. We attempt to learn the meaning of the message, which is not always easy. For one thing, if a speaker does not enunciate clearly, it may be difficult to tell what the message was. Did your friend say, "I think she'll be late for class," or "My teacher delayed the class"? Number 3. Evaluating stage. It requires both the listener and the speaker to meet in between regarding the points portrayed in the listening process. This allows the listener to critically examine the details of the information heard. This provides the time for information segregation. This is also known as the judging the value of the message stage. We might be thinking, "This makes sense," or conversely, "This is very odd." Because everyone embodies biases and perspectives learned from widely diverse sets of life experiences, evaluations of the same message can vary from one listener to another. Even the most open-minded listeners will have opinions of a speaker, and those opinions will influence how the message is evaluated. People are more likely to evaluate a message positively if the speaker speaks clearly, presents ideas logically, and gives reasons to support the points made. Unfortunately, personal opinions sometimes result in prejudiced evaluations. Imagine you're listening to a speech given by someone from another country, and this person has an accent that is hard to understand. You may have a hard time simply making out the speaker's message. Some people find a foreign accent to be interesting or even exotic, while others find it annoying or even take it as a sign of ignorance. If a listener has a strong bias against foreign accents, the listener may not even attempt to attend to the message. If you mistrust the speaker because of an accent, you could be rejecting important or personally enriching information. Good listeners have learned to refrain from making these judgments and instead to focus on the speaker's meanings. Number 4. Responding stage. It allows the listeners to provide verbal or nonverbal feedback and responses based on the listening contexts. It's sometimes referred to as feedback. It's the stage at which you indicate your involvement. Almost anything you do at this stage can be interpreted as feedback. For example, you are giving positive feedback to your instructor if at the end of the class you stay behind to finish a sentence in your notes or approach the instructor to ask for clarification. The opposite kind of feedback is given by students who gather their belongings and rush out the door as soon as class is over. Last stage, the remembering stage. It is a personal stage for the listener, allowing him to integrate in him the information heard. This allows him to record in his system the information listened to for future access and use. If you can't remember something that was said, you might not have been listening effectively. Wolvin and Coakley note that the most common reason for not remembering a message after the fact is because it wasn't really learned in the first place. However, even when you are listening attentively, some messages are more difficult than others to understand and remember. Highly complex messages that are filled with detail call for highly developed listening skills. Moreover, if something distracts your attention, even for a moment, you could miss out on information that explains other new concepts you hear when you begin to listen fully. Analytical listening is a very helpful strategy in problem solving. In solving a particular issue or concern, it is important to identify first the significant information required. In solving a problem, In a listening text, the first task is to identify the problem. From the listening text, find the answers to the following questions: who, what, how, when, where, and why. According to American Society for Quality in 2020, there are 4 steps in solving a problem, which include the following: define the problem, generate alternative solutions, evaluate and select an alternative, and implement and follow up on the solution. Hope you took note of the important things about analytical listening, the stages, and the steps on how we can solve problems through analytical listening. See you next time for more important lessons.